Humanity has long debated the question of whether God exists, but the most neglected and at the same time the most obvious evidence lies not in the stars above, nor the vast oceans beneath our feet, but within the human mind itself. Rationality, the ability to reason, to analyze, to recognize patterns, to question, to deduce truth from falsehood, is a mirror in which the reality of God is reflected more clearly than in any telescope aimed at the heavens. To deny God while using reason is to use the very proof of his existence in order to argue against him, which is as contradictory as denying the existence of air while breathing it. Let us reflect carefully. What is reason? At first glance, one might claim it is nothing more than the electrical firing of neurons, the exchange of chemical signals in a lump of biological matter called the brain. But if that were all, then reason would have no claim to truth. A rock rolling down a hill follows the laws of physics, but no one calls the rock reasonable. A computer processes algorithms and outputs results, but no one attributes truth to the machine itself. It is only following what it has been programmed to do. Reason is fundamentally different. Reason is the recognition of truth, the grasping of meaning, the ability to stand above mere physical impulses and declare, this is consistent, that is contradictory. This leads to truth, that leads to falsehood. The materialist faces a grave dilemma here. If our rationality is nothing but the accidental byproduct of blind evolutionary forces, then why should it be trusted? Evolution is concerned with survival, not with truth. An organism can survive with false beliefs, so long as those beliefs produce behaviors conducive to reproduction. For instance, if a primitive man believes a tiger is a god and must be worshipped by running away, the belief is false, but the action, running, still ensures survival. Thus, natural selection has no inherent interest in truth itself. If reason has emerged purely as a survival mechanism, then we have no assurance that it reflects reality at all. And yet we rely upon reason every single moment, not only to survive but to understand the cosmos, to unlock mathematics, to discern morality, to construct philosophies. This leap from survival-driven instinct to truth-seeking intellect cannot be explained by accident. Our rationality is not merely practical, it is universal. 2 + 2 = 4, not because human brains happen to think so, but because it is a truth independent of our perception. If every human being on Earth died tomorrow, 2 + 2 would still equal 4. The Pythagorean theorem, discovered thousands of years ago, holds true regardless of whether humans know it. Rationality, then, is not subjective. It aligns with objective truths that pre-exist human thought. Where did this harmony between mind and cosmos come from? Why is the structure of our thinking so perfectly aligned with the structure of reality? The atheist must answer this, and no satisfactory answer is possible without appealing to something beyond blind matter. The atheist may insist that rationality is just the product of brain chemistry, and brain chemistry is a product of evolution, which in turn is the product of chance mutations guided by survival. But this explanation collapses under its own weight. If our reasoning is nothing more than chemical reactions, then the atheist's own reasoning is also nothing more than chemical reactions. By his own admission, his denial of God is not the result of a rational conclusion, but of blind physical processes in his neurons. Thus, the atheist saws off the very branch he sits upon. If his reasoning is trustworthy, then reasoning itself must be more than blind chemistry. And if reasoning is more than blind chemistry, it points beyond matter, beyond chance, to an intelligent source. Furthermore, rationality reveals qualities that are strikingly divine. Reason demands consistency, order, and truth. The laws of logic are timeless and universal. Contradiction is universally rejected, coherence universally required. Where do these laws come from? They are not physical, for they cannot be touched or measured. They are not subjective, for they bind all minds equally. They are not invented by humans, for humans discover them rather than create them. Their existence implies a higher mind in which they are grounded, a divine rationality that transcends individual human intellects. Our reason is not self-originating. It is a reflection, a shard of light from the greater intelligence that authored reality itself. Atheists often argue that invoking God to explain rationality is unnecessary. They say rationality is just a brute fact, something that simply exists without explanation. But this move is nothing more than intellectual surrender. To call reason a brute fact is to close one's eyes to its nature. Reason is not a brute fact. It is an invitation. It constantly leads us beyond itself, pointing to an order greater than our own. Just as the written word points to the writer, just as music points to the composer, so too rationality points to the rational source. Denying this is like admiring the beauty of a poem while insisting that no poet exists. Moreover, the harmony between our rationality and the structure of the universe is astonishing. The human mind, evolved on a small planet orbiting a small star, somehow unlocks the mysteries of black holes, the curvature of space-time, the quantum structure of matter. The mathematics in our heads corresponds with the mathematics in the cosmos. Einstein once remarked that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible. Why should the universe, if it were the product of chaos, obey elegant mathematical laws that minds like ours can grasp? Why should the equations written on a chalkboard correspond to the behavior of galaxies billions of light years away? This is not luck. It is symmetry. It is design. The atheist may attempt to brush this off by claiming that only a universe with such harmony could produce beings like us. Therefore, we should not be surprised that we find ourselves in it. This is the so-called anthropic principle. But such reasoning is circular and shallow. It is like finding a book filled with profound wisdom and claiming it is no surprise that you can read it. After all, if it were gibberish, you wouldn't be able to read it. Yet the real question remains: why is the book filled with wisdom in the first place? Similarly, the anthropic principle does not explain why a universe exists that is readable, rational, and aligned with our reason. It merely hides behind tautology. Reason is not a trivial accident. It is the bridge between the human and the divine, the echo of an eternal intelligence resonating in finite minds. It cannot be reduced to biology because biology itself is only understandable through reason. It cannot be dismissed as illusion because even to argue it is illusion requires reason. Reason is the light by which all else is seen, and that light cannot light itself. Just as the eye cannot see without the sun, reason cannot exist without the ultimate source of reason, which believers call God. And here lies the irony. Every atheist uses reason to argue against God, yet every argument they make is possible only because reason exists, and reason exists only because God is real. The unbeliever borrows from God's treasure while denying his ownership. This is why no atheist can ever fully escape contradiction. To speak coherently, to argue, to claim to know truth, he must lean upon the very foundation that points to God. He is like a man standing in sunlight denying the existence of the sun, unaware that his very denial is illuminated by that sun. If reason is indeed a reflection of God, then one must also ask, why do so many deny him while using that very faculty? The answer lies not in the weakness of reason itself, but in the will of the one who reasons. Rationality points upward, yet the will may prefer to look downward. It is not that reason is insufficient, but that it is often suppressed, twisted to serve desires, pride, or fear. When a person insists that God does not exist, he is not simply making a neutral observation. He is taking a stand, often driven by the consequences of belief rather than the evidence itself. For belief in God is not merely an intellectual admission. It is a moral and existential surrender. To acknowledge a higher mind above one's own is to accept that one's life is not ultimate, one's will is not sovereign, and one's freedom is not absolute. Thus, the denial of God is rarely about reason, it is about resistance. But even resistance cannot erase the marks of the divine etched in the mind. Consider mathematics. Numbers are not physical things, they are abstract, eternal truths. No one has ever touched the number 7, yet it exists undeniably. Even if every human perished, the truth of 7 would not cease. Where do such eternal, immaterial realities dwell? They are not products of matter, for matter can change, decay, vanish, but mathematical truths remain. The atheist, in using mathematics to build his arguments, is leaning upon eternal truths that demand a non-material grounding. To admit the reality of mathematics is to admit the reality of a transcendent order, and to admit the reality of a transcendent order is to walk halfway toward God. Now reflect upon morality. Rationality is not limited to mathematics and science. It extends into ethics. Humans recognize not only what is, but what ought to be. We declare murder wrong, justice good, compassion noble, cruelty evil. But why? Evolution may explain why cooperation is useful for survival, but it cannot explain why goodness should be binding. If morality is nothing more than survival strategy, then no act is truly right or wrong. All is merely preference. And yet, deep within, every human being knows there is a difference between a mother protecting her child and a tyrant slaughtering innocents. This knowledge is rational. It appeals to a standard beyond survival, beyond preference. That standard, universal and binding, cannot arise from chance. It arises from the very source of reason, which is also the source of goodness. Here again the atheist faces a contradiction. If morality is subjective, then no one can condemn anything, not genocide, not slavery, not oppression, for all would be mere opinions. But if morality is objective, binding on all rational beings, then it requires a transcendent anchor. A law implies a lawgiver. To deny God while affirming moral reasoning is incoherent. The atheist who cries against injustice is, knowingly or unknowingly, appealing to the divine standard he claims does not exist. Furthermore, consciousness itself magnifies the case. Rationality requires not only thought, but awareness of thought. We are not machines spitting out data. We are conscious beings who know that we know. Where did this mysterious light of awareness come from? Blind matter cannot produce consciousness, for matter is silent, inert, and unconscious. If everything were mere particles colliding, there would be no self to observe, no I to think, no experience of truth. Consciousness is the greatest miracle in the universe, and it is inseparable from rationality. To deny God while standing within the miracle of consciousness is like denying the painter while staring at his masterpiece. The skeptic may argue that consciousness and reason are simply emergent properties of complex systems. But emergence is not an explanation, only a label for our ignorance. To say rationality emerges from neurons is no different than saying wetness emerges from water molecules. It describes, but does not explain. And in the case of rationality, the problem is deeper. Molecules are not about truth. They have no meaning, no intentionality. How can meaningless particles give rise to meaningful thought? How can unconscious matter suddenly care about logic, truth, or morality? The gap is unbridgeable. The atheist may use words like emergence, but in reality, he has no explanation at all. Another dimension of rationality that points to God is its demand for unity. Reason seeks coherence. It cannot rest in contradiction. Our minds are restless until things fit together, until the fragments of knowledge align into a single whole. Why is this so? If reason were only a tool for survival, why would it hunger for ultimate unity? Why would it ask about the beginning of the universe, the meaning of existence, the ultimate cause. Animals survive without such questions, yet man is consumed by them. The very restlessness of reason is evidence that it was designed not merely to help us survive, but to lead us back to the one who alone unifies all truth. Atheists sometimes claim that belief in God is irrational because it cannot be observed directly. But this objection misunderstands reason itself. Rationality is not confined to what can be seen. It is the faculty that interprets, deduces, and transcends mere appearances. We do not see justice, but we know it. We do not see numbers, but we trust them. We do not see logic, but we obey it. To demand that God must be seen with physical eyes is to reduce reason to mere sensation. Rationality is greater than the senses, and it points us to realities beyond the physical. God is not seen in the way we see a stone. He is known in the way we know truth itself, clear, binding, undeniable once recognized. In fact, the very structure of atheism proves God. For to deny God, the atheist must construct arguments. But arguments rest upon logic, and logic rests upon the very rational order that testifies to God. Thus, the atheist's denial is parasitic. It borrows from the reality it denies. He is like a thief stealing bread while denying the existence of bakeries. His words are possible only because God is real. If there were no God, there would be no reason, and without reason, the atheist could not deny God. His denial refutes itself. Now let us bring these threads together. Rationality shows us truths that are timeless, mathematics, universal, logic, moral, ethics, and transcendent, consciousness. None of these can be explained by blind matter, random chance, or evolutionary survival. They all point beyond the physical to a higher reality. That reality is not chaotic, for reason abhors chaos. It is not unconscious, for consciousness shines through our minds. It is not amoral, for morality binds us. It is intelligent, moral, and personal. In a word, God. And once this is grasped, the supposed strength of atheism crumbles into dust. The atheist claims to be rational, yet his worldview denies the very possibility of rationality. He claims to be moral, yet his worldview reduces morality to preference. He claims to know truth, yet his worldview undermines truth itself. Every weapon he raises against God shatters in his own hand. The believer, by contrast, sees reason as a gift, a mirror of the divine, a bridge between the finite and the infinite. In acknowledging God, the believer does not betray reason, he fulfills it. In the end, rationality is not neutral ground between the believer and the unbeliever. It is the believer's strongest ally. For to think is already to walk in the light of God. Every argument, every equation, every moral judgment, every quest for coherence is a testimony that our minds were made by mind, that our reason is a reflection of reason itself. To deny this is not merely irrational, it is to deny the very foundation of rationality. Thus, the existence of God is not a hypothesis added to human reason. It is the condition that makes reason possible. Just as the eye cannot see without light, the mind cannot reason without God. And so we stand at the final truth. Every thought, every logic, every pursuit of knowledge is already a prayer, already a confession, already a witness to the reality that unbelief cannot erase. God exists, not only in the heavens, not only in sacred texts, but in the very structure of the human mind. To reason is to testify, and to testify is to affirm him. Those who deny may argue endlessly, but in their very arguments they prove him, for without him their arguments could not exist.